The Sopranos is a crime drama created by David Chase that premiered on HBO in 1999 and ran for 6 seasons, ending in 2007. The now classic mob drama follows the life of New Jersey mob boss Tony Soprano and his life dealing with all of the issues that a mob boss faces, such as treacherous underlings, dysentery in the ranks, and the temptations as a don to wear shorts. One of Tony's biggest challenges is his protege, Christopher Moltisanti. Christopher is groomed and moulded by Tony to be his right-hand man in the mob, and even perhaps his successor after he is gone. Tony teaches Chris all the ropes, fast-tracks him up the mob ladder via nepotism and favoritism, and protects him from dangers such as the itchy trigger finger of his uncle Junior. The two are inseparable. That is, of course, ignoring Chris's numerous issues. He is constantly flirting with the idea of life outside of the mob, life in the movies as a screenwriter. He's constantly late to meetings, speaks out of turn, and in general is inadequate as a number 2 for Tony, and on more occasions than one causes Tony to burst into an irate fit. Christopher's issues are compounded by what might be considered his defining trait, his alcohol and substance abuse, whether it be unrestricted access to the drink or stabbing himself with needles. Nothing grinds Tony's bones more about his nephew than the knowledge that he is a junkie. Others would have been killed in this position, given how much of a liability it is to have a drug addict in the crew, how many years he could get in the can if caught, whether he would flip and give everyone up. Chris, however, being much loved by Tony, is given an intervention, and though the likes of Tony and the crew are often a hindrance more than a help, by constantly breaking Chris's balls over his abstinence, Christopher's fight against the drink and the needle remain a constant battle until his dying day. Interestingly, Chris traces his drug addiction back to his father, Dickie Moltisanti, a man who was a hero to Tony and was essentially his mentor, much like how Tony is Chris's. During a barbecue party, Chris tells Tony, "The great Dickie Moltisanti, your hero, wasn't much more than a fucking junkie." Dickie Moltisanti is seldom referenced in The Sopranos, and he of course died before the events in The Sopranos take place, but it's clear he's held in high esteem by Tony, who calls him a legend. The greatest incident regarding Dickie is when Tony and Chris drive to the retirement party of a cop, Barry Haydu, who according to Tony killed Dickie while he was carrying TV trays home. Tony tells Chris that Dickie was killed on the orders of Jilly Ruffalo, a man who Dickie disfigured because Ruffalo killed a former cellmate of Dickie's. Tony gives Chris the orders of killing the detective, which he does by entering his home at night and shooting him. But Haydu constantly denied he killed Dickie before Chris ended his life, telling Chris that he's being set up, a possibility that even Chris himself acknowledged. Before he is killed, we do hear the words "I'm sorry" being repeated, but it's not clear whether this is the cop saying it or whether it is coming from the TV that Christopher had on. And even if it was the cop saying "I'm sorry," it doesn't prove that he killed Dickie, as he might have been saying anything he could have to save his life. And so, it's gone down as one of the great mysteries in The Sopranos as to whether the cop really did kill Dickie Moltisanti on the orders of Jilly Ruffalo. Many fans feel that Tony manipulated Chris into killing the detective, who Tony wanted dead for other reasons and had outlived his usefulness. By telling Chris that the man killed his father, it would make him more loyal to Tony, since it was Tony who gave him the opportunity to avenge his father and bring closure to his dad's death. And the question as to whether it really was the cop is never brought up again in The Sopranos, much like other great mysteries of the show, such as what happened to the Russian that escaped Paulie and Chris in Pine Barrens, a mystery which I've actually answered in another video, so be sure to check it out and subscribe to the channel for more Sopranos content. Even David Chase didn't know who killed Dickie, as he mentioned in an interview. "I wrote the episode where Tony's in the car explaining all this to Christopher. I just made it up. It was interesting to me to expand on it. Like, what is he talking about?" In a way, the purpose of writing the prequel film was to find out what happened. Anyway, with the news that The Sopranos creator David Chase and one of the original Sopranos directors, Alan Taylor, were making a new Sopranos prequel movie, The Many Saints of Newark, fans were excited. Not least because, as the title suggests, Many Saints translating as Moltisanti, the new Sopranos movie would centre on Tony's mentor, the great Dickie Moltisanti, played by Alessandro Nivola in the film. Fans speculated that since Dickie is the main character, surely he must die in the end to give the film closure, and if that happens, will finally have this mystery solved. And as it turned out, that is exactly what happened. So who killed Dickie Moltisanti and why? Was it really the cop? Was it really Ruffalo, hunting his nemesis Dickie while desperately trying to shove a glass eye into his socket? There were so many theories in the run-up to the release of the Many Saints of Newark. One was that Tony himself killed Dickie, with perhaps this being his initiation kill into the mob, and his guilt leading him to take on Christopher as a protege. Others thought that maybe it would be Johnny Boy, who grew tired of Dickie's antics as a junkie, much like how Tony grows tired of Chris's addictions, and even actually kills him. But interestingly, the movie shows that while Dickie might possibly have an issue with alcohol, as he is seen drinking several times, though not really enough to suggest he's an addict, there is literally no evidence in the film that he was a drug addict. Rather, when he died, he had medication on him that was meant for Tony's mother, as Tony had sought Dickie's help in mending her psychological imbalance. The pills being on his body are mentioned to Livia, Tony's mother, at Dickie's funeral, who assumes he was a user. And thus we can assume that this is where the legend spiraled from, that Dickie was a junkie, something that haunted Chris as he thought his problem was hereditary, but it turns out it wasn't. But anyway, Dickie's killer, as those who have seen the film will know, was not any of the usual suspects, nor the black gangster Harold, who must have been the prime suspect throughout the film as he had a vendetta against Tony. Harold was used as a red herring, and the man who actually ordered Dickie's death was not Tony, not Johnny Boy, but Uncle Junior, the cagey fuck. After all this time, all the times Junior played catch with a young Tony, when Tony toasted Junior as the new boss of the family, when Tony lamented to Junior, "Don't you love me?" when Junior shot Tony in confusion, when Tony told a dementia-ridden Junior that he and Tony's father ran North Jersey. After everything that happened between the two men, it was Uncle Junior who murdered Tony's hero growing up, the man he connected with most, looked up to, and the man who, if he was alive, would have surely pushed Tony for a life outside of the mob, something he tried hard to do in the film. Instead, we can assume that Dickie's death, looking at the final scene of the movie, is what spurs Tony on to join the mob, perhaps as retaliation for Dickie's death, with him looking to hunt down the people who he is told killed Dickie. And unless a sequel proves otherwise, we can assume that Junior plays a major role in Tony being moulded for the mob, with him taking Dickie's place in Tony's life. The revelation comes in the film where Junior talks into a payphone to someone who says it's done, and that someone sounds suspiciously like Tony Sirico, suggesting that Paulie Gualtieri was also in on the hit this whole time. The actual shooter remains a mystery, and is something we'll probably never know. Maybe it was Paulie, maybe it was a random goon, or maybe it was actually the detective, only on the orders of Uncle Junior. Whoever pulled the trigger, the events in the film suggest that not even Tony knew who killed Dickie, so maybe he told Chris what he was fed. Or maybe he knew he had no idea who Dickie's killer was, but still wanted Chris to kill the cop. Who knows? There's much there to speculate for fans. But why did Junior kill Dickie? Ostensibly, it comes out of nowhere. Junior isn't even in the film that much, and he's one of the most lovable characters in The Sopranos, having some great moments of wisdom for Tony and some hilarious one-liners. But you'll have to think back to season 1 of The Sopranos, before Junior became a couch potato getting confused watching Larry David, to remind yourself that Junior was a very insecure man who felt he had been passed over, and all of a sudden, his killing of Dickie makes a lot more sense. Dickie is killed by Junior for several reasons, even though Junior says to him, "Consider me your brother." How sad that he eventually kills him. But anyway, it can be summarized by saying Junior was jealous of the man. Jealous, spiteful, marginalized, and emasculated, in a manner of speaking. The thing that comes to mind when we find out it's Junior that ordered the hit is when Junior slipped and fell at a wake. Tony and Johnny Boy come to help, but Dickie finds the entire situation hilarious. Junior is irate with rage, calling Dickie a cocksucker and staring at him with hate while Dickie giggles like a schoolboy. Later, it's suggested that Junior is no longer able to perform in bed as a result of a back injury which came from his fall, and he projects his anger, emasculation and frustration at Dickie, shouting out, "Fucking Dickie Moltisanti." And when it's put to him that Dickie didn't push him down the stairs, he slipped, Junior replies, "He got a good laugh out of it though." Junior's injury is something I find really interesting, because if we're to take it that it's permanent, it could be why he goes down on women. something that's considered unmanly in the culture these guys live in. But perhaps this is the only way Junior can pleasure a woman now, which must add to why he's so furious when Tony finds out and makes jokes about it in season 1, leading Junior to sanction a hit on Tony. Junior killing Dickie over him laughing seems very petty, because it is petty, but it's perfectly in line with Junior's character, who had someone murdered by Mikey Palmlease because of the way he talked, and as mentioned, his attempted murder of Tony. But there is more evidence sprinkled throughout the movie that highlights Junior's resentment over Dickie. It's sprinkled in small doses, but it's there. Even in the series, we know that Junior has been around for ages. He's so old, and yet he's never been the boss, and when he does get on the throne, remember he's essentially given it by Tony, who uses it to get pressure from the feds off of himself. But when Junior does get the big seat, he is not respected by his capos, who are secretly run by Tony, and almost immediately he is arrested and faces a lengthy court trial under house arrest. He has no wife, no children, no son to carry the name. Even his nickname, Junior, suggests that he is always inferior. Imagine a guy who's about 70, 80 years old whose nickname is Junior, but it comes from him essentially being Johnny Boy's sidekick, despite him being older than Johnny Boy. He constantly snaps and projects his own insecurities and narcissism, not even letting poor Hugh be surprised by his own birthday party, for instance. The guy is a massive bitch, and all of these qualities the show highlights to us are amplified in the movie, where again, no one takes Junior seriously. In one of the first scenes we see Junior in, Dickie says that Livia looks like $1 million, and Livia clearly has a lot of love for Dickie, smiling at him and calling him Mr. Handsome. Uncle June chimes in with a dead joke about the dollars not being Mexican, which no one finds funny. This again is quite interesting when looking back at The Sopranos, because one of the things Junior did so much of when he was in the mental institution was tell jokes to other patients, and his lines were a constant riot, and Junior loved all the attention he got from them. Anyway, Dickie and Johnny Boy talk business before Junior has even gotten up off his seat and walked around to them. When Johnny Boy is sent away, Junior says to the other mobsters, "When my brother's away, everything goes through me," which leads Joey Diaz to make a diarrhea joke, and Junior walks away. You might consider also that there's some subtext behind this, i.e. Junior is basically saying he shits himself. In other words, he can't handle his business when his brother isn't around. He relies on him. When Junior offers to talk to Tony about him getting kicked out of school, Livia says he only listens to Dickie, and that the way Junior talks confuses Tony, and that's an encapsulation of a wider source of frustration for Junior. Tony is so close to Dickie over his own blood uncle Junior. Later, Paulie makes a joke about Junior's girl two-timing him, and Junior uncomfortably laughs it off and makes an odd conversation starter, something which Dickie calls out, saying, with his hand around his girlfriend I might add, "I don't know about you, Junior. Guy tells you your girlfriend's banging somebody else, you're worried about the origin of Gravy Train?" To which Junior looks very uncomfortable, and aside from when he's in physical pain, perhaps the most uncomfortable he ever looks in the movie. Dickie then says, "Smile, my brother," which Junior could take as an insult, as if Dickie is taking the piss regarding Junior's earlier words of advice where he says to Dickie to consider him a brother. And when Harold comes over and makes a racist remark against Italians, rather than rise like Paulie or glare like Pussy, Junior puts a hand out to Paulie to calm him down, saying, "Let it go," which just kind of highlights that this guy doesn't really have any balls, that he would take that kind of shit from a black associate. Then, when Johnny Boy is out of prison, Johnny scolds Junior for allowing black people in the neighborhood and compares him to Dickie, saying, "How do you let this happen? Boo-hoo-hoo, look at Dickie Moltisanti. His father gets whacked, he steps up, takes care of his family, takes care of all the business, not a peep out of him. He's younger than you." At Johnny Boy's party, Dickie shows everyone his son Chris and says to Junior, "Finally, huh? Corrado, right? Got myself a son." Which it seems was said in good faith. After all, Dickie thought he and his wife couldn't have kids, but Junior, as insecure as he is, possibly took this as a snide remark, i.e., "Look, I have a son, I have progeny, and you don't." Junior's witty comeback, "I hear he's slow with the talking," is again ignored by everyone. Even the varsity athlete line. It's like Junior feels emasculated and jealous about all the masculinity on display, and feels compelled to bring everyone down to his level. And for sure, it does seem like throughout the film there is a silent dick measuring contest going on between Junior and Dickie. especially in regards to who gets Johnny Boy's approval and who is Tony's favourite uncle. Even though it's all pretty much one-sided, Dickie probably doesn't even notice it. And then the slip and fall and subsequent bedroom issues with Junior trying to get it up and then seeing Dickie's giggling face pop up in his mind, you can imagine him seething with rage, wanting to punish Dickie, not just for laughing, but for showing him up all these years, having a son, having his own crew, being Tony's favourite uncle. There really are people like this in the world, I'm sure you've come across a few. And he's wanting not only to punish Dickie, but to step up, to show he's a man, to perhaps take over Dickie's operations, as suggested by the fact that Paulie, who worked for Dickie, is apparently in on the hit. And maybe, as the sequel might establish, this event is the catalyst for Junior getting his own crew, becoming Tony's favourite uncle, grooming a young Mike Pamleese as a son, doing all the things that he saw Dickie do over the years while silently seething with jealousy. So when you look back, though it's not in your face, there's plenty of reasons for Junior wanting to take out Dickie, and it feels very Sopranos for him to be the one who killed the man, and over typically petty Junior reasons. For more Sopranos content, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification button down below. And thanks for watching.